A new subtype of depression has been identified. It may affect every fourth patient. Depression is a serious illness and medication is not always able to improve the patient's condition. However, there is a chance that in some of these cases it was due to a lack of knowledge. Recent research has shown that there is a type of depression we didn't know about before. It was identified by scientists at Stanford University and may affect up to a quarter of all cases. Researchers at Stanford University have identified and described a new subtype of depression. In their research, they used questionnaires, cognitive tests and brain imaging. Scientists have defined it as a cognitive biotype and, as the name suggests, it is associated with disorders in this field. According to the authors of the study, the newly described subtype applies to 27%. And, to make matters worse, prescribed antidepressants do not always work. Identification of a hitherto unknown subtype of the disease may help to develop new therapies and treat such cases. The description and results of the research were published in JAMA Network Open. According to researchers from Stanford University, up to 27% of people may suffer from this previously unknown subtype of depression. Patients diagnosed with depressive disorders. In the case of the United States alone, this may affect as many as 5.7 million patients. It should be emphasized that the subtype discovered differs significantly from the previously suggested subtypes. This difference consists primarily in the presence of cognitive deficits in memory and self-control. At the same time, the symptoms of such depression are not relieved by antidepressants that target serotonin secretion, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. Cognitive tests have shown that such patients have difficulty planning ahead, self-control, staying focused, and suppressing inappropriate behavior. In addition, imaging showed decreased activity in two areas of the brain responsible for these tasks. In this situation, voices calling for the development of new targeted therapies for the aforementioned 27% are not surprising. Patients, in their case, in order to be able to improve their mood and current functioning at all, you should first focus on improving the cognitive abilities. Because sometimes the loss of certain mental abilities is not necessarily the result of depression, but its cause. The first research in this direction was carried out in 2014 and 2020. The new type of depression has been dubbed cognitive subtype by scientists. Its name is related to the randomized clinical trials they conducted. 1,008 patients with untreated depression took part in them. Before starting the research, a thorough assessment of their condition was made. The patients took participation in tests to assess their working memory, verbal memory, decision-making speed and ability to pay attention. Another assessment in this regard was made after 8 weeks of therapy with the use of SSRI drugs. In addition, the brain function of the 96 patients was also assessed using magnetic resonance imaging. During the study, they had to press one of two buttons in response to the commands appearing on the screen. It was found that in people whose information processing was slower and those who had more severe sleep disorders, as researchers learned from questionnaires, the activation of the cerebral cortex and prefrontal cortex was limited. At the same time, in these people the scale of improvement under the influence of SSRIs was by far the smallest. The Romans crucified people in England as well. A skeleton was found with a nail in the heel. Archaeologists found a nearly 1,900-year-old skeleton with a nail in the heel bone during excavations in Cambridgeshire. The bones were found in an emerging housing estate and did not seem special at first. Now researchers believe they have found the best physical evidence that the Romans crucified people in England as well. At the time of his death, the man was between 25 and 35 years old and was buried with his arms crossed over his chest in a grave with a wooden structure. Burial took place in one of 5 cemeteries around the newly discovered Roman settlement of Fen Stanton, between Cambridge and Godmanchester. Only after examining the bones in the laboratory did it turn out that there was a nail stuck in the heel of the skeleton. According to experts, their discovery is the best physical evidence of a crucifixion in this part of Europe so far, which was carried out in Roman times. These types of finds are extremely rare. As the researchers explained, crucifixion involved nailing or tying the victim to a large wooden beam. A person hanging above the ground in this way died of suffocation and exhaustion. Few of the nails used in such executions have been found, often because the victims were not later buried in cemeteries. It is also possible that, contrary to popular belief, the Romans used ropes rather than nails for crucifixion. The results of the archaeologists' work were published in the British Archaeology magazine. The skeleton was discovered and recorded at the excavation site in November 2017. At that time, no one noticed anything unusual, because the discovery was covered with mud. It wasn't until the bone was cleaned in the lab that the nail was revealed. For the first time, archaeologists managed to dig up a skeleton in which a nail was found. It's not the kind of thing you expect, explains David Ingham, head of excavations at Albion Archaeology. We know quite a lot about the crucifixion from historical accounts. We can describe what it looked like, where and when it was practiced. But this is the first tangible evidence revealing how such an execution took place, explains the researcher. The analysis of the bones was carried out by Corinne Duig, a renowned archaeologist at the University of Cambridge. It was she who came to the conclusion that the nail was used during the execution. The find is all the more remarkable as it is very rare for the body of a crucifixion victim to be brought to the settlement after execution and buried next to the others. We will never know the reasons for the crucifixion and the man's identity. However, archaeologists can deduce a lot from the data collected so far. The Fen Stanton man may have been a slave or a rebel. For it was for such persons that the Romans reserved the punishment of crucifixion. The place of execution of the sentence is unknown, but it must have been some distance from the cemetery. Perhaps near the nearby Roman road via Divana. The find is the only case of physical evidence of a crucifixion in Northern Europe and the 4th recorded worldwide. 2 of which had no associated nails. A heel bone with a nail in the same position as the new find was accidentally found by builders in Israel in 1968, but was less well preserved and aroused some controversy. Thanks to radiocarbon studies, we know that the Fen Stanton man lived between 130 and 360 AD. In turn, DNA analysis showed that he was not genetically related to any of the other people buried in the cemetery, but came from the native population. There is evidence that suggests the man may have been a slave. His shins showed signs of damage, as if he had worn shackles for a long time. This is not conclusive evidence, because the man could have been imprisoned for other reasons. Ingham hopes the 3D replica of the heel bone with the nail in it will be displayed at the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology in Cambridge.